Call the meeting to order. Could I have everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next up, public to be heard. None that I see. And then it's my turn for the good news. We have not a whole lot, but I'll just read a couple, one from each place. From Batavia High School, Sarah Geithner. Janine Scanio has been working hard since the beginning of the year to turn her classroom into an inviting learning space. She's had to deal with a lot of equipment and materials left over from the previous owner of the room. By moving some furniture, organizing the materials, and working around the items still in the room, she has turned her room into a great learning space. From the middle school, Jessica Franks. The BMS math team came in third place at the January competition with 1 point separating second, third, and fourth place. Gretchen Weischer was the top scorer in the region. From JK, Heather McCarthy. JK held an SEL family night on Monday, January 23rd. It was a great success. Thank you to our incredible SEL team and our volunteers. From Jackson Primary and Robert Morris, Paul and Newman. Thank you, Greg Johnson, for working so diligently to make our classroom a better place. We appreciate you. And then finally, from the district office, Dr. Molly Corey. The K-2 teachers at Jackson and John Kennedy schools participated in a coaching cycle from a professional coach from Wilson Learning. The professional coach taught lessons to our students so that teachers could see their students interact with a guru during a foundations lesson. This experience will deepen our teachers' knowledge and expertise with teaching foundation schools. And there is plenty of other news on the website, so please feel free to look at that. Now we'll move on to presentations. And first up is overview of Genesee Valley BOCES, Mr. Kevin McDonald, Superintendent. Kevin, you're up.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to be back. Nice to see you. We spend so much time together during the search, and then I don't see you for months at a time. So nice to see all of you, and nice to be back here. I know Brittany included in your packet a couple of things from BOCES, and I'm going to do kind of like your board president did and start with the good news story and try and butter you up before I talk about the budget a little bit. But you know, there's a page in there on Batavia success stories, and I'm not going to read it to you. You guys can do that, but there's a couple of really interesting pieces. You guys send 155, 156 kids to career and tech on average every year. We appreciate that collaboration. We appreciate the business that you provide, and we really hope that we are serving your kids and giving them value added to their education. But two interesting pieces. One is the 2021-2022 Nassau Culinary Hunch. We've been involved with this for the last number of years. We're not always as successful as this group was, but one of your students participated in the program, and what they did is they had to prepare a meal for the astronauts in the International Space Station. The interesting part is the meal's got to be able to survive the trip to get there. And so they prepared a meal. They were judged very highly. They got into the top 10. They were selected to go to Houston, where they ultimately prepared their meal. They didn't get into the top 3, so their meal didn't get to the space station. But quite an interesting experience for the kids to get to go to the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas as well. And then the other one is the automotive, the 2021 Ron Smith Memorial Automotive Competition. In the 10 years that I've been here, we've had 4 kids, you can see it's a team of 2, that have ever won this. And that's pretty impressive. It's an ECC, it's from BOCES all around Western New York, going east to Rochester. And you can see one of your students, Noah Burke, won that competition, $10,000 college scholarship and a $5,000 tool scholarship. Since COVID, unfortunately, there used to be another step to this. The kids that won this competition then went out to New York City to compete among high schools and college kids as part of the New York City Auto Show. About 7 years I had a chance when the first group of kids won and to go and watch that, and it's pretty impressive. So just wanted to share a couple success stories with you about the kids that come over to Career and Tech across the street on a daily basis. They're doing wonderful things. The other piece you got is on the BOCES administrative budget. On April 24th, or somewhere thereabouts, each board is asked to vote on the administrative budget and the BOCES board members. We will have 2 new board members coming up in the next year. We're going through that process right now to identify who those folks may be. Ed Engel from Oakfield, Alabama has been on the board since the late 80s, over 30 years. And Dave D. Laverne from Pavilion has also been on the board, just a few short years shy of that, so we're losing a bunch of experience. But the budget, if you look at the very top of this page, the operations number 1 is what you actually vote on the 24th. And you can see from 22-23 to 23-24, our budget for 23-24 was already done in an effort to help districts in your budgeting. When you get to it, you know what the BOCES programs are going to cost, et cetera, is going up 3.4%. That budget is truly a rollover budget, representative of just increasing salaries, fringe benefits, et cetera, in that budget. The one piece I did want to touch on is our lease rental, because you might look at it and go, holy cow, it's going up 19%. I wanted to explain that a little bit. For at least 25 years, when we rent classroom space from districts like we used to here, we pay $9,000 a classroom. $6,000 of that was always in the administrative budget, and $3,000 of that would be in the program budget. So if it was a career and tech ed classroom, career and tech ed budget would pay for part of that. If it's a special ed classroom, you get the idea. This year, after taking a look at increasing the rate, we decided that, how come we just don't put all of the rent into the admin budget? Because when it's in here, you guys get your full BOCES aid on it in the year that you spend it. So you don't even wait a year for the aid. So it's really a shifting of cost that's really driving that 19% increase. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. And I think in the long run, more cost effective will drive more aid to school districts because in our region, generally our school districts are at least 70% BOCES aid. So in the long run, I think it will make some good sense. And we will revisit it again next year for those districts that we do rent heavily from. They haven't had an increase in this amount in at least 25 years. And I say that because our business official, our chief financial officer, Dan Groth, for as long as he's been in the organization, that hasn't changed. So it's something that we'll look at with the superintendents. And then if you take a look down at the bottom, I put some notes in there, but then on a 5-year average, you can see that we've been at about 0 or better when you take all 3 cost centers and add them up. A lot of that was due to some refinancing of some capital debt that we had due to a capital project back in 06, 07. But that bond is now nearing its end. We're in the final 5 years of that bond. So that's going to level out now in terms of the, the principal and interest payment. We're really starting to hit more of the principal than the interest at this point in time. So that's our budget. We're always trying to be fiscally responsible. We always understand the challenges of our districts. In a year with increasing inflation and those things, it was just, it was a challenge to try and keep this to 0 or better. But any questions on the budget or the cost centers? Lease rent is exactly as it is. Those are the spaces we're renting from districts. The capital, that's the bond that districts are paying on right now from the 2006-2007 capital project, which was in total just a bit over $39 million. And that'll be coming off the books in about 5 years. We would hope to be planning, we are going to plan another capital project, just like you would do, to try and keep that debt service level, but also so we can get some updates for our facilities. It can be a little bit challenging in the current environment to do one capital project every 20 years and trying to keep up, as you well know. You do them far more frequently, so we're looking forward to that planning here in the near future. So I'm going to pause and see if anybody's got any questions.
Anyone?
Nothing? I want to say thank you for selecting Jason. Jason has been a great addition around the group of 22 superintendents at the table. Oftentimes in the Genesee Valley region, we're welcoming new people to the table and new to the position. In this case, we brought an experienced superintendent to the table, and his voice is respected. His experience is taken advantage of around the table to reach to him as one of the veterans around the table who's had a lot of experience through a lot of different times. So he brings a great voice around our table. We're happy to have him, and happy he's back home in Batavia. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, Kevin, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good to see you guys. Have a great night.
Nice to see you.
Take care. Good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
You may have an issue with Jen remoting in, she can't hear anything. So I'm not sure what we're gonna do if she can't hear the phone.
You okay with that
Are
one?
we trying to fix it now, or should we go on?
You can go on.
All right,
Okay.
go ahead.
Next up, Jackson Primary update from Mrs. Maureen Lataro and Mrs. Jessica Torrey.
Hi, everyone. Thanks
Hello.
for having us. Thank you very much.
There's feedback.
So, thank you.
Hold on, I don't know why it's doing that.
Just,
Better? So as you know, we have two schools, Robert Morris and Jackson. Here's a picture of the two schools coming together. Both schools are running very smoothly. Thank you for your support in getting our preschool and UPK over to Robert Morris. It's been a really big success. We have a total of 348 students at Jackson, and Robert Morris now has 102 students, a combination of the UPK special ed preschool and regular UPK. So that's the update on that.
maybe, turn it on, I don't think it's on.
You'll see in the presentations, the administrators start out the same with our mission and vision, as that's our first, what we all start with. And at Jackson, I think you'll see how Jessica and I will take you through the progression of how it's our students' first experience with school. So think about, if you have children, your own 3-year-old, 4-year-old, some of the preschool kids are 2. So how they feel when they're walking into school. So we really try to make the experience something that we strive so that students will remember. We try to teach them to be kind, accepting, and to respect others. So that's part of the mission and vision that we talk about with all the kids at UPK K1. Okay. So everything's based off our strategic plan. So what we're doing at Robert Morris and Jackson Primary, we were told to choose one area to focus on. So we chose number 4, effective teaching in every classroom. Learn, practice, implement, reflect upon models of effective instruction, evidence-based teaching practices as a means of improving students' learning. So we shared an experience at our leadership meeting in the summer with an activity that we did where we all got together for our shared decision-making team, and we all decided to where we got together and we decided what we were going to pick. What did we settle on? What were we going to do? So we participated at the activity, and we all decided to choose number 4. So we created all of our Jackson and Robert Morris. We aligned our building goals. We have a pretty robust team. We have 2 parents on there. We have an instructional coach, an AIS teacher, an aide, classroom teacher, special area teacher, and Jessica and myself to support our shared decision-making team, decision-making that we do. So I can show you on the next slide. This is what it looks like. So what we did was we talked about how can we engage families in literacy? How can we infuse literacy at home and at school? So one of the things that came out of our shared decision-making team from our parental piece was they were really curious on how they could help at home. So they weren't really sure what they could do. So what we did was we came up with an idea to infuse literacy with music. So teachers came up with ideas of what they could do to support literacy through music, and engaging families decided they wanted to do a literacy choice board at home, and I'll show you what that looks like. Here's an example of what a music song, a bonus song letter about what they chose. It's really quick.
Sing along with me, and then I'll do one where you can repeat after me. Bonus letters, bonus letters, bonus letters are swell. FLSC, FLSC, bonus letters letters help us spell.
So you can see how we're infusing music through literacy. So kids, you'll walk into classrooms at Jackson and at Robert Morris, and you'll hear teachers singing and supporting what we decided with infusing the literacy through music. So at home, the parents came together, and this is really taken off. So the parents and the shared decision-making team created this literacy bingo board. So we'll send them home for 2 months. And if you look at some of the things on the literacy choice board, you'll see read and make a holiday recipe together. Play a 10-minute tidy up, pick up your toys. Practice rhyming, read a book together, write letters in the snow, write your child's name on a piece of paper, cut it up and put it in order. So they're all things that we can do, and they're by grade level. So they're by skill for UPK, K, and 1.
And these align to what they're learning in Foundations as well. So our Foundations program is our early literacy program. The boards all align with the skills that they're learning in Foundations per month.
So in order to have this take off, we made a video, actually to show parents what it would look like, what they can do at home.
Hi, Jackson Primary Families. My name is Lori DeStar, the principal.
And I'm Nancy Brady, the principal.
And you may have seen these bingo boards come home. We're promoting literacy with families at home. And we have a couple friends here that will explain exactly what we want you to do to be entered in to win a prize for a family experience sponsored by our parent-teacher group.
Thank you so much for sending back your boards for November and December. We excitedly went through all of them, and we're looking forward to our new boards that are coming out right after this video.
Hi, Jackson Primary Family and Friends. I'm Mrs. Pugh and Mrs. Ryder. And we are going to teach you one of the ways you can promote literacy at home. Okay, you ready, Ryder? Okay, first we're going to do is we're going to read our tricky words that we've been writing in Foundation. This one, door, you, are. Whoa, fast. This one, say, good job. So now, Ryder, what we're going to do is we're going to practice table writing and sky writing. So you pick one of your tricky words. R, okay, go ahead. So say it. A, R, E. Excellent. Okay, now pick another one. Your. Y, O, U, R. Excellent. Now I want you to sky right now, okay? So which one would you like to do? Say. Okay, ready? T, H, E, Y. Good job. And this one? What is it? U. Y, O, U. Excellent job, Ryder. Hi, Jackson family. This is Mrs. Karloff. And we are here to help promote literacy at home. So we've been really working hard on tapping out the sounds. So, can you tap out the word ham? Good job. Now tap out the word ham. Good job. Next, we're going to tap out the word can. Good job. And the last one is tapping out the word band. All right, now we're going to do a bonus round. Can you tap out the word ball? Excellent. And the last one is tall. Great job.
Jackson families, you can find these boards per grade level in your students' folder. They will be due back for February break on February 17th.
Thank you for supporting our reading initiative.
So the literacy choice boards took off. The parents really enjoyed it. Another example of infusing literacy at home is you'll see that part of the choice board was write your child a note. So we've seen so many notes come in from parents that just like an uplifting message, just telling the kids to have a great day. So we've been promoting them and they've really been catching on. We get like 2 or 3 at least a day. This picture on the right is the family experience from the choice board that a UPK student won for completing the board. He did every single piece of the board, set notes in with it, and brought it into school, and he got picked as the winner. And when we gave him all the games and all the candy, he was super, super excited about it. And his mom was really happy too. So they're really getting engaged with the infusing literacy at home. That was part of our shared decision making, along with infusing music at school. So they were 2 separate things. They came up with a bunch of different things. In the top 5 were infusing literacy at home. What can parents do? There was dramatic play. There was pet therapy, and then there was another. What was the other one? There was play, therapy. There was one other one. But we settled on. After we put everything together, we settled on infusing literacy at home and through music. So next topic is about data-driven decision-making. So we have data meetings with teachers every other month They come into our office, they bring evidence of learning, of student success. They talk to us about reading interventions. We make sure that we meet with every teacher, and when they come in, we make sure that they bring evidence of what students have learned and talk about action plans for students that are not reaching mastery and students who are above what they are at grade level. So we have our grade level meetings where we're doing them once a month, and they're really targeted professional development with PD and math and ELA. We reflect on the shared decision-making goal. We always come back to that shared decision-making and the goal of effective teaching. We are learning a lot of different parts of our lesson plans. Every faculty meeting, we talk about different things that's part of the district lesson plan, anticipatory set, learning targets, questioning, to make sure that all students are engaged and everybody's working together to make sure that we come up with our common goal of those effective teaching strategies for that number 4 of shared decision making. So now for our goals for the year. Our ELA goals is that we're going to focus on progress monitoring. Every teacher at Jackson Primary progress monitors their students. And what does that mean? That means that they look at data every month and they decide what kids need more help, and then they adjust their tier 2 instruction. So every teacher is looking at every student and making sure that they know exactly where they need to be and give them the help that they need. Also, like I said, data meetings, shared decision making. We have teachers that are piling wit and wisdom. That's a comprehensive ELA program crafted to help build knowledge and skills. Just another way to show that we're trying to reach our ELA goals. So these look like a lot of numbers, right? So our goals are 80% of students will raise the regional score from September to June, and we'll have 80% passing on foundations assessments. So when teachers come in to do a data meeting, they come in and we pull this up. Every child is on the list. We do a word knowledge inventory. We do the DIVL scores, which is the early literacy benchmark. We look at the regionals, we look at the iReady diagnostic, and we look at the foundations assessment. So if students are not passing by 80%, you'll see, this is unit 4. Only one student didn't get mastery at 80%. So we sit down and we talk with teachers about what happened with this child, how they cannot get to 80%, and what can we do to make sure that they pass their foundations assessment.
You'll also see retesting scores in there, so if 80% of the students don't make the 80% benchmark, teachers are required to reteach and reassess their students.
So progress monitoring, students are given foundations probes and they're completed twice a month. They look at them, they readjust their instruction, they make sure they give them exactly what they need. They look at phonemic segmentation, fluency, oral reading fluency, letter naming fluency, nonsense word fluency. In kindergarten, they're focusing on letter and sound checks to make sure that students know to move on to the next unit. And then AIS, which is the academic intervention. The DIVL's progress monitoring is completed weekly for students in AIS. AIS is for kids that need extra. And like Jess said, 80% of kindergarten and first graders will score at least 80% on the ELA regional assessment, and then we really support this through progress monitoring. What's important to know is that students that don't get the 80%, we don't let teachers go on. We make them go back and reteach the concept, and those students that don't have the 80%, we make sure that they're getting that extra support. Everybody gets the same tier 1 instruction, and then we break it down by who needs what.
We're really teaching for mastery and not exposure.
So this is our UPK data. I just want to give you an example of what this would look like. So students in September, those are upper and lowercase letters. In November, you can see how they progressed up. The red is when they didn't know. This is November, how they're going up, and then look in January. How many kids know their letters, upper and lowercase? So this is the DIVL's data. This is the DIVL's is an early indicator of early literacy. So if you look at the fall data, you'll see a lot of red. And in the red, you'll see that kids were struggling. So we looked at the DIVL's data. We went into PLCs, which are professional learning communities. We sat down with teachers, and we talked about exactly what each child needs. So if you look, they monitored their tier 2 instructions. So they got the tier 1, they put into the tier 2. We looked at their data for this from the DIVL's, and then we readjusted our instruction, and you'll see a lot more green. So what we're doing is working because we're looking at the nonsense word fluency, and you can see how some kids didn't do well in the fall. We adjusted, and they're doing better in the winter. This is just a kindergarten letter sound check, so we start in kindergarten with their letter sound checks. You can see that this is week 2, all the red, and this is week 12. Green means they mastered it.
Okay, Colton, are you ready? Okay. Sound? Okay. Gotcha.
So that's just a student that the letters and sounds for foundations are tracked. If the student doesn't know that letter, during the Tier 1 instruction, they're placed in a smaller group where maybe somebody would just go over the letter and sounds with them to make sure that they knew them. But you can see the growth, and we track that because if you don't know your letters and sounds, you can't blend them together to read. So our job is foundational skills. We have to have students be able to read, they have to know their letters, their sounds, and then blend words together. So our job is the foundational skill set. So you'll see that, kids are making tons of gains by that was week 12. So the next thing I want to showcase is we have a literacy profile sheet that we send up to John Kennedy. So it starts in UPK with all the data from UPK. They take it for GANS, which is an early learning screener. And then we look at their ELA regional and math scores from kindergarten. And then this is a profile of a student that I have permission from the parents to talk about. So in kindergarten, you'll see in the red, the student really struggled on his foundations units, unit 1, 2, 3, for recognizing letters. He went through MTSS, and Jess was going to talk about MTSS in a little bit. He went through MTSS. And working with this student, we set goals for him together to help him blend and segment words. And then we looked over the data, gave him exactly what he needed. It was almost like the teacher wrote a prescription for the student. She could see through our progress monitoring and our data collection that he struggled segmenting words. So she adjusted her Tier 2 instruction, and the kid took off. It was really a big success story. And we looked at it, gave him targeted instruction. Next year when he goes, he'll have this nice literacy profile. If you look, it'll go from UPK, kindergarten, all the way up from first grade. See his foundations assessments, 80% was what we expect, and he did way better than 80%. We want him to be more fluent, so he had letter naming fluency. Blues, all great. One little area here that we'll work on, and then when he goes up to John Kennedy, it'll be a nice little literacy profile that every student at Jackson goes up to John Kennedy with. So we track this for every child.
Our math module assessments are linked with grade level standards and then entered into eDoctrina. So this allows teachers an item analysis of each one of the assessments, highlighting areas that students have mastered and areas that are in need of reteaching. And, teachers to go back and go over those specific learning standards again. We're working on a mastery goal for module assessments, the same as we are for our foundations assessments, 80% of the students scoring 80% or better. We use That's okay. We use a lot of different areas to measure for math as well. We use our regional assessments in math at the beginning and the end of the school year. We use our module assessments, and we use iReady also as a screener. Here's an example of a kindergarten standard. These are two questions off of one of their Module 1 math assessment, where they needed to identify one more on this side and one less over here. As you can see, in November, for question number 7, which measured one more, students scored 65% mastery in November, and after small group reteaching the concepts in need of improvement, working with our math coaches and reassessing, the students then improved to 94% correct. So very similar results in looking at one less. In November, we had 52%, and then students in January, after reteaching and reassessing, were up to 92%. So it really does take a lot of time and effort for teachers to really look closely at that data and go back and reteach. Math spirals and concepts build upon each other. So it's important that we make sure that students have mastery before moving on to the next topic. If they can't recognize numbers 1 to 10, they're not going to be able to add and subtract them. So mastery is very, very important. We did have a math learning night earlier in the school year in November, where we had parents that came in, so we had math and movement that was here. And then these are some pictures from our iReady diagnostic. We really worked very hard on getting our students excited to take the iReady computerized test, especially our kindergartners that haven't had a lot of time on the computer, especially taking computerized tests. So Mrs. Kokidas and Mrs. Bixby, our math and literacy coaches, dressed up as the mascot, and then they had glow sticks. The kids had the lights off. They worked really hard on helping them be excited about taking the assessment. We're going to be working more with that when they have to take the end of the year assessment. They'll be getting licenses, and we're going to improve their goals also.
It's hard for them to navigate the computer. It's on a touchscreen, so they really had to learn how to do the computer-based testing. So it was nice that they got a chance to be exposed to it.
Professional learning communities, or PLCs as we like to call them, allow educators opportunities to directly improve teaching and learning. PLCs allow teachers an easy way to share best practices and brainstorm innovative ways to improve learning and student achievement. Right here's a picture from one of our PLCs with our kindergarten team, and first grade also does the same. PLCs build stronger relationships between team members, and learning from others in your PLC allows teachers to reflect on ways to enhance their teaching and adjust their practice. Different backgrounds and viewpoints add value and purpose. Teachers can participate in learning walks to go see other teachers in their PLC and learn how they teach specific concepts or subject areas, ways that they would like to make improvements in their own classroom. This helps build the capacity of our teachers to improve learning and drive student achievement through job-embedded professional development. Teachers follow a protocol when completing a learning walk: what surprised them, what can be used, what could be modified and then used, and what was impactful. Teachers meet monthly in PLCs to discuss the questions above, which are listed right here. What do we want all students to know and be able to do? How will we know if they're able to learn it? How will we respond when some students do not learn? And how will we extend the learning for students who are already proficient? So they use their data as a guide, and they collaborate together to problem solve as a team. So it's really an effective use of time. We're working on doing this monthly for our teachers. It's important that they use the DIBELS, which is done 3 times a year, as a guide, and then their progress monitoring is done every 2 weeks. So that's their new data to check against those DIBELS scores, what's working, what's not working, how can I make improvements.
And they'll bring their data to those PLC meetings to share ideas. We had our first one last month, in the amount of sharing that was going on. They thanked us when they walked away. They said, thank you so much for giving us that time, because maybe they're struggling with a concept and they could talk to their colleague about it when normally they may not have that time to do that. And during those learning walks, so next month at our March faculty meeting, everybody had to do 1 or 2. So what we'll do is we'll line chairs up, and then we'll have them move from person to person to share exactly what they learned. So I learned this from Jess, I learned this from Ches, just so they can share with each other during that time. And it's really amazing. We started those back at the middle school, but they really work well.
And at the PLCs, there was so much sharing going on. It was a great collaborative experience, and a lot of the teachers were thinking and saying out loud, oh my gosh, that's great, I want to see that. And we were like, we'll cover your classroom. What do you need?
Go
Let's
see
get
it.
you out there. Go see that. Go see how that teacher is doing it. They talked a lot about fluid groups and being able to move kids in and out of groupings, which makes the most sense so that they're not stuck in a specific rotation. And they're very responsive to their progress monitoring results and their data.
And I think part of the PLCs too, for Jessica and myself, when we're designing our master schedule, we really change the way we're thinking. So we can have teachers that align up so they can share groups. So if somebody has high or middle or low group, they can share the kids during that time. So they'll all be sectioned, four teachers, 4 kindergarten teachers, 5 kindergarten teachers. They'll all be teaching the same thing, so then they can fluidly share them for like a response to intervention model. So we really thought differently based off this PLC, how we would change our thinking.
Another important piece of the PLCs is that teachers built in goals that were responsive to their progress monitoring and their DIBEL scores. So during our data meetings and then during our next PLC, we can talk about what happened with those students. Did they make their goals? If they didn't, how can we use each other to help lift those students up?
And on that chart with all that red and green, on the bottom, each teacher writes a goal for every red kid, every yellow kid, every blue kid, so they can tell us exactly, this is what I'm doing for, word sounds. This is how I'm gonna have them segment the words. This is what I'm gonna do. And before, we talked about it, but now it's very strategic where they come to the data meeting and they know that we're gonna ask, this kid had this score 2 weeks ago. Now, what did you do to get them to move when we're meeting? So I think it's holding, teachers accountable to them, just not accountable, get them to think a different way than maybe they didn't think before, knowing that we're all working together in the PLC.
Our examples of social emotional learning, we follow 3 phrases: be respectful, be responsible, and be safe, which is used throughout students' experience and time at the Batavia City School District. It builds on a little bit at each building, but those are our 3 that we use at Jackson. Students learn what those words mean through social stories at the beginning of the year. Those are pretty big words for preschool, kindergartners, and first graders. We've also implemented green and red choices. And that's really like a universal language that's been used in all areas in our building. Classrooms, hallways, specials, cafeterias, we even use them on the bus. So you'll often hear parents that come in or they're walking outside and they'll say to their child, was it a green day or was it a red day? Did you make a green choice or was it a red choice? So it's really become this universal language that not only we use in school and our teachers use in school, but parents use at home also. We have assemblies that reinforce what green choices look like in each of our areas in the building. Videos are also created by our SEL team and shared with teachers on the monthly SEL newsletter to reinforce these concepts as well. We have monthly Circle Up meetings, which are done with community readers to enforce specific traits. Students participate in monthly circles to build a school and classroom community. The people that often come in and read, like Judge Durham Rogers just came in and read to us about honesty. He was on the bench, he had his robe on, read the story, and students are able to participate in these great circles, and then they have questions and prompts that allow them to talk about the specific traits. Those are used throughout the month within the classroom and then reinforced throughout the school. We have bulletin boards and then talked about in the announcements as well. SEL is incorporated through various subjects, so if you come to our SEL night on Thursday, if any of you are free.
4:30 to 6:30.
We will have our SEL Monsters, which is a great project that we do with our high school teachers. So our students in our class draw a monster that expresses a specific feeling. Those projects get sent over to the high school, and then they create those projects using different modes of art. So those will be on display at our SEL night. Also at our SEL night, we will be having yoga, dancing. Kids can create affirmation jars and mindful sticks. We will have community resources and organizations there. There will be parent engagement centers where we have our social workers that will be talking with our parents, and then the kids will be doing an activity. We have Bouncy, the SEL dog, who's coming if you're interested in meeting Bouncy, the SEL dog. He is a pilot program that we're working on with 2 of our kindergarten classrooms right now that teaches deep breathing, and empathy through taking care of pets. So we have many school-wide events at Jackson. Community Helper Day was one of them that we did in conjunction with John Kennedy at Halloween time. We had about 10 community area helpers and businesses that came in and passed out candy, and kids could learn about different types of careers. We had math, movement, and literacy curriculum night where we had families that came in and they learned all about what we're doing at Jackson, what does foundations look like, what does math look like, and gave them an opportunity to actively participate. We do our turkey trot, which is they learn about turkey facts during Thanksgiving, breakfast with Santa, holidays around the world, our sing-along with a Santa visit. We do field days in the summertime. We just finished, which this is really neat if you were able to see it on social media. Mr. Smith was able to come over and participate in our Olympic Games. And we had students that learned all about different types of winter sports that would be part of the Winter Olympics. They were able to learn about setting goals and having New Year's resolutions, which tied in nicely with our data discussions that we're working on. And then the students participated in what those sports might look like at a modified level at our age. So it was a great opportunity for the kids. We just had Day of Play. Cupid's Corner is happening now and has happened for half of our kindergarten, where parents are able to come in and do crafts with our kindergartners, sing songs, have treats. Our SEL Family Night is coming up this Thursday if you're able to come. Author's Tea will be happening in first grade. Family Reading Night in April. And we have our March Madness book tournament, which has different community members. Mr. Regal's ready to go with his book this year.
Brackets.
I better win this year. That's high, beat me last year, so
That was hard to beat.
that was hard to beat.
That was a hard one.
Yes.
Community members and a lot of staff that read their favorite childhood book or their favorite children's book, and then the kids vote on it. So it's a really great opportunity to help students get involved.
I think I lost a
So the last thing we'll talk about is communication. Obviously, that's key with parents. We have an open door policy at UPK and Robert Morris and Jackson. So I sent out a monthly parent newsletter. If you haven't seen it online, it just looks something like this. It just has a message from me, upcoming dates. Primary parents like to have things they can take out of a folder and put on the fridge. Sometimes it's not always in a digital form, so I like to send it out as paper. Every week for teachers, I do something called the Jackson Weekly Wrap. Just has things that are, for teachers with upcoming dates, some instructional articles, everything on shared decision making, some instructional strategies that complement what we're learning about. This month happened to be about learning targets. I gave visuals, talked to them about what we might be looking for when we do observations during classroom visits. Also, there's a spot for colleagues to give their colleagues a spotlight. And just other upcoming dates, volunteer chaperone form, just to keep everybody informed because people need to know what's going on. There's some more pictures.
We really like to keep the staff and the students part of a cohesive team because we are two buildings, but one school. So working together to make sure that we're including everybody and that we're one building.
Right. So I think to conclude our presentation, like the takeaway that I think I would want you to know is that we're building foundational skills so students know how to read when they go to JK. They're learning letters and sounds, they're blending words, they're doing CBC words. We're making sure that we're being very intentional with our data. So we're sitting down with teachers. Our teachers are progress monitoring every child. They know exactly what they need. They're adjusting instruction. I'm really proud of all the work that they're doing. They're really taking the data seriously. They're looking at it. They're saying, okay, this child needs this child needs this. They're grouping them together. They're being very intentional. And I'm really excited to see with this foundations. I showed you last year, we brought a couple kids in to the board meeting, but what this looks like even moving forward. So foundations is our tier 1, and then we're really, really breaking everything down to make sure that every child leaves Jackson. I'm gonna hand them off to JK, hopefully ready to fly and having them be fluent readers. And then we're working on our math goal, and then more importantly, the whole child with SEL. That is really important. A lot of kids come from different backgrounds. You have to really be cognizant of what they're going through at home. So we really try to make school fun. I don't want you to think it's just all like data, but that really is important. but students don't even know at Jackson that they're learning the way we're doing it. They have fun, they sing songs, we're supporting our shared decision-making initiative, we're really making sure that every student is getting what they need. And obviously, questions for us?
I have a couple questions. When you do your meetings and you're talking about individual students within that meeting, are other grade level teachers in those meetings, or would it just be like first grade, you have all your teachers there
Yeah.
and they're talking?
Due to like time constraints, so we would love to get there to have everybody together in like a professional learning day. That would be great. So like, what do they need to know in first grade? Okay, but just for now, we just started it last month, and I'm going to a conference next week about PLCs, which I'm really excited about. So kindergartens together and first grades together.
I see. And the other thing that I wanted to ask is, you said that when there are specific subjects that some students don't do well in, and they go into a specific group, and then the other students are doing other things within the classroom. Who's teaching that group?
Right. So there's teacher aides that run groups. So
see.
you'll see like we use teacher aides instructionally.
Okay.
So if there's somebody that has mastered the concept in those smaller groups, there'll be, if you come visit our school, you'll see centers. You'll see independent centers where kids are doing, maybe on the computer on iReady. You'll see a teacher-led center, and you'll see a teacher aide-led center. So I just was in a classroom the other day where there were kids that were on the floor that needed more support, while the kids behind had already gotten the concept and they were actually writing the words. So it was kind of like a fishbowl, right? The kids on the outside already knew it, but the teacher was challenging them, and the kids on the floor were doing something else. So they didn't even know, they were just all learning at the same time. But
And what if you identify a student that is really excelling in that class and beyond many of the students in that class? Are there resources for that child too?
So the teacher would have to adjust the instruction to challenge that person to take it to the next level. But if you're asking, like we used to have ACE that started in second grade when we were a K-5 building, we don't have an ACE teacher, but the teachers recognize that students that are getting higher on the foundations assessment, they are enriching them.
Okay.
They have activities for them. Like I said, I just watched one the other day and I was like, yes, it's great.
And part of our PLC meetings, we talk about what happens when students are already proficient in those standards. How do we challenge those students and those teachers being able to collaborate and work together? That's where those ideas come out to.
There was a lot of aha moments at that PLC, like, oh, you're doing that, and just people sharing ideas to push those kids, and kids that don't know and kids that already know.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you, nice job.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies. All right, next up, instructional technology update from Superintendent Jason Smith.
I know we should just see how easy use that word instead.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. I want to begin by thanking the board for authorizing this study that really was initiated by the comptroller audit that we received back in the fall. And I literally received that audit about a year or so ago, my first day on the job. So since then, we've done a lot of work to make some improvements, and I want to share with you some of the key recommendations that came from the study that we had done and some steps moving forward. So just a quote starts off, technology can become the wings that will allow the educational world to fly farther and faster than ever before if we allow it. So technology is not a standalone item anymore. It never should have been. Our strongest teachers who are well-versed in technology can use it to enrich instruction, enhance instruction, and make it really seamless. That's what that quote is speaking about. So as you saw, Maria and Jessica, a lot of lines back to our strategic plan. I think it applies to all four pillars, but I've highlighted the key words with respect to technology. Safe and orderly is obviously important. We're going to talk more about the collaborative piece with respect to the technology subcommittee. I just talked about how can be used for effective teaching, and also how it's aligned to our curriculum or our technology standards that we have to address as well. So before I talk about this, I want to tell you just a quick story. When Van Halen was on tour, he used to have a contract. And in that contract, he specifically said, in his dressing room, he would ask for no brown M&Ms, the chocolate candy. No brown M&Ms in my candy jar. Right? So if you went to the back of the dressing room and saw the brown M&Ms in there, what do you think he was probably thinking? What else do they not read? Are the speakers right? Is the light right? All right, so when I received that technology report, the comptroller's audit, which called for better monitoring of devices, I thought of my brown M&M story. What else is there that we need to be looking at besides trying to track down our missing devices or these devices that we cannot account for? So we identified some opportunities. We did an RFP to look for some consultants to help us with this, and again, we're committed to this idea of continuous improvement. What else is there besides trying to do a better job of our inventory? What else can be done? How else can we improve our technology beyond inventory control? And as you can see, as you will see, there are about 10 or 12 key items that we can do. I want to start and end with the board policy that we have already in place on technology. I've highlighted the key phrases in there. So we have board policy in place that currently supports some of the initiatives. As a district, we are strongly want staff development, prepare our students, integrate technology, equitable distribution, promotion of technology, and provision of sufficient funds. Then the board trusts the superintendent or his or her designee to assess the technological needs of the district, which we have done over the last 6 to 8 months. Let's go through the key findings and how this happened. So we began by surveying our staff, and we had great participation, surveying our staff what they thought the strengths and weaknesses were. We also talked to our students. So that was one of the first steps that we did. Is we had anonymous surveys. They were issued 2 or 3 updates and reminders to this is an opportunity to share with us what's working well, and what can we get better at. There were extensive interviews of staff. I was not part of any of the interviews. I did talk with the folks myself, with our experts, but they had confidential interviews with staff, with students, with faculty, with our buildings and grounds crew, and everybody up and down the school district. They obviously looked at the audit, the comptroller's audit that cited us for devices that we cannot account for, and fees. We're going to talk about that in a second. They looked at all our board policies, all our technology plans, and then probably the most important thing is they benchmarked us with other similar-sized districts, so about 4 or 5 other key districts, small cities. So that was the scope of the study. Let's go through these one at a time. The first key finding, we obviously wanted to take a look at the comptroller's audit. And I shared with you, it's on the board agenda, there's about 3 or 4 pages of key recommendations that speak to how we can improve our processing of items. So those are the key pieces there. Enforce existing board policies. Obviously maintain and have asset identifiers, manage our overall equipment and physical inventory. Since November, we've gone above and beyond what the comptroller has asked us to do. I want to just thank Ryan Arlington. Ryan is an EduTech employee. He's with us 2 or 3 days a week. He works closely with Dr. Corey. Since then, as I mentioned in the fall in our newspaper story, we have since saved over $100,000 in fees. The comptroller cited us for $17,000 in fees that we cannot account for. We went further and found even more savings. So plans are underway, and you as a board approved the corrective action plan in the fall. We could have stopped there. So with respect to the comptroller's audit, our obligation was done, right? So if you go back to my Brown M&M story, you can see there's more pieces that we had to be looking at. And that's what the rest of the findings are. The key recommendation is, and we heard this from staff and students, we need strong technology leadership there, a formal district employee. Ryan Arthurton is here 2 or 3 days a week. With all due respect, Ryan does not work for us. He is here 2 or 3 days a week, and he's just not here full time. Molly Corey has other obligations as well. I do want to say, as an aside, I'll say in just a minute, one of the pieces the surveys was very complimentary about was the work of our technicians and how responsive they are to the needs of our staff and students. So the first key recommendation is to reestablish a formal district leadership position, our own, in the technology area. When I talked about the culture piece, reestablish a formal instructional technology committee made up of staff and students. Establish a formal data protection privacy officer to be fully compliant with Ed Law 2D. That is simply data protection. We have steps underway for that now. And then, of course, the rest of the study, if approved, the technology director will then implement the rest of these findings on his or her own with the support from district office staff. The way I have it set up now is the individual would report to Tricia Finnegan with a sideline report to both Scott and Molly, and ultimately me, of course. So that really is the key finding. The rest of these pieces can happen once and if we have this individual in place to move us along. So I was having lunch with students last week, and we talked about this, and I said, I asked them some very honest questions. How are your Chromebooks? Do you have problems with the internet in our school? And they're sitting here in this room. And I said, yeah, right about in Mr. Meckler's room, we have a hard time accessing the internet, Wi-Fi issues. That came through both in the survey findings and in the interviews. What else can we do to improve the speed of the internet? Both staff and students raised issues with dead zones throughout the district. Not every place, but obviously it's an important piece to be able to access the internet in a efficient manner. So as I said, students right here say, yeah, right above us there's an issue. When my children were here, I have one child here now, but when my 2 oldest children were here, they would often come at home and kind of, talk with me and complain about how their Chromebooks work or did not work. As they're just being pains and they're just talking about their laptops. Well, one of the pieces that we learned from our staff and students is that maybe we can do a better job with the technology, at least for our older students. There was some dialogue around, do we want to have laptops, like we all have, laptops for high school students versus Chromebooks. Chromebooks are less expensive. Laptops can do more. There's more to them. There was conversation around exposing our students to have Microsoft Word opportunities. We're working now with Paul Kessler at the high school to find a way to have a Microsoft Word course in place for our students through the business department, or by Microsoft Office Suite for our students. There are limitations with Chromebooks. Many districts bought Chromebooks because they are less expensive. But as students move through high school and get into college, is there a need to have them have better equipment, such as laptops? There was conversation at the Jackson and John Kennedy should our younger students have access to touchpads. When I sent this technology finding to Mrs. Nataro, she wrote back, yes, that would be nice if our students had more touchpads for our students. Our students expressed some frustrations around printing issues as well. MLog 2D, this was a minor point, but it's an important point, but we are making progress here. We want to make sure that all the expectations for EdLaw 2D, our students' data is protected, right? It's not that it's not happening now, but we want to do as much as we can to make sure that we're not at risk. We want to think about maybe having a part-time data protection officer. We have somebody in place now, a teacher that we approved in the last board meeting, who's doing some great work with that so far. Now, anything you want to add to that? Now, you've been working hard on that.
It's just a big job to ensure that we're really doing all that we can in every facet. There's some things that are kind of easy to do, but there's other things that are a lot more complicated. So I think it's a much needed thing.
Lots of times some of those like free apps like Remind, they're great, but we want to make sure that they're properly vetted to make sure that our students' student staff data is not at risk. So there's a need in the surveys and in the interviews to look at ways to better train our staff, everywhere from our students to our maintenance staff to our administrators. And again, all these pieces should happen through the direction of a technology director at the district level. There are some nice suggestions, like maybe have training videos on a website. And then here's another piece to this may happen long term. Have IT coaches maybe at each school. A teacher who is well versed in instructional technology can she or he help a teacher move technology along in his or her classroom. So in other words, I usually teach history. I'm doing a lesson on the Bill of Rights. It's a great technology resource I can use to help students understand the Bill of Rights more. What websites out there, what software is there, that person would have time to research those things after the teacher. So there is technology standards. Dr. Corey had put this slide in there for us. There are areas that we could specifically teach students how to do, besides how to do a PowerPoint slide and an Excel chart. What else can they learn about technology? This is happening somewhat in the high school, up in a business office, but you can see it goes all the way down to grade K with what we should be teaching students. Again, that's not happening now, but one of the items that our staff and students raise is what else can we do more to improve that opportunity. We said we have staff member that we have through our local BOS's office. We want to go back and look at those opportunities. And again, I want to say the staff that work for us, as well as Ryan, the feedback we got from the staff, from our staff on them was very positive. So this is not a personnel issue. It's a leadership issue. It's a district issue. And again, this emanated, this started from the comptroller's audit. And then we went further than that. And with again, the same thing, the same piece to start with, the same board policy piece, what we have made a strong commitment to as a board and as a district, more district along, to improve the technology piece for our students. So my key recommendation that we don't have to really vote on now, it's not on the agenda, just get some feedback on. There was a point in time when the district had a technology director. So that really is the key recommendation to get that in place. We have funds in the budget now that would account for that. Scott and I are working on it as we speak. So we will want to come back to you in March with some recommendations for impact on the school budget, impact on staff. But this really is the key piece that we need to have. Not to say that a full-time technology director would have stopped the audit from happening. Okay, not to say that there were issues with that. But we have to do a better job, as you can see, based on the staff feedback and the student feedback, what else can we do to improve overall technology for the district, while also maintaining the operations, keeping track of laptops, making sure fees are kept to a minimum. And again, I want to thank Ryan and Scott and Molly for the work thus far in reducing the fees even further than what the comptroller had cited us for. So again, just think about that Brown M&M story, and what else we can do beyond those items. So the next steps would be, we'll want to come back to you after we have some feedback here with a recommendation to, I guess really should say, recreate a full-time position. We'll look at the budget implication and then start posting in, recruitment process, and then look at a appointment in the spring with the exact title to be determined. And ideally, the person would have a both instructional background, having taught at some level, and also have a pretty good understanding of technology and how to work with teachers and staff and administrators and students on implementing these 10 or 12 key recommendations moving forward. With one of them, of course, being recommendation 1, the accountability of equipment. Trish Miller's got anything to add that you study this along with me as well? Brian?
We've come a long way this year.
I have some questions.
Great, thank you.
Who's going to be writing the Director of Technology job description?
That would be myself and Tricia,
Okay.
primarily based on some of the feedback we've received.
Will you be looking at other school districts and their
Yes.
directors of technology and what they're responsible for?
Yes, and I would reach out to those districts. So they looked at districts, we looked at like Geneva, Jamestown, maybe Dunkirk, Spencerport. So we would contact them to see what the job description is. We have a current one in place now, but we would also want to modify that to, to then reflect these needs here as well.
Right.
So,
I'd also like to know, when you have this under technology functional review, what is benchmarking of other similar size districts? What does that mean?
in layman's terms, we called and said, hey, we asked other superintendents from districts our size to identify how much staff they have.
I see.
Compared to how much staff we have. It's no different really than when we compare ourselves, like you saw last month with our assessment scores, we compare ourselves to other small cities, how we do relative to those small cities, they're all saying. So we, like it wouldn't be reasonable for us to contact Elba, right, to find out what the staffing is, right? It would be reasonable for us to contact maybe Rockport.
Yes.
It would be reasonable for us to contact Geneva, Jamestown, those types of schools. Niagara Falls, North Tonawanda, we'll come back now. North Tonawanda, Niagara Falls, those schools are the ones that and they all have a director of technology in place.
How many employees do we have in the technology department right now?
It's 8. Well, it all depends on whether or not you count the building level tech support as technology department folks.
So so count them.
So it would be 8, including BCSD employees.
With the ones in the schools? Yeah.
So are your expectations of the director of technology in these key findings from the comptroller's audit that they would be the one that would enforce the existing board policies?
Yes.
They would be designating somebody within technology department for data management?
Yes.
So they wouldn't specifically be responsible themselves. There would be someone within the technology department. Because this is a big job.
Right. It's very similar. I guess the best analogy is in my daily work. I can go from having conversations of the roof to having a conversation with Dr. Corey about first grade. Do I have to fix the roof myself?
No.
You don't want me to fix the roof, so no. But I have conversations with staff, with Scott and Jim Jacobs on things like fixing roofs.
So those specific kinds of things that will be designated will be assessed by the director of technology as how well that employee is doing with that job.
Yes.
So would that be a rewrite of some of the technology department's employees?
It could be. I would want to. Yes, it could be. I would want to have the technology director, once and if the person is in place, have him or her then work with us on some of those steps. So I would want the person to kind of come in and really read the whole report.
Right.
And then make some decisions in partnership with the 4 of us and with you.
So I know this was before your time, but how long have we been without a director of technology?
So I'm going to have Scott fill it in, but I know in March of 2020, spring of 2020, the position was abolished, and it's been 2 years, two and a half.
Yeah, 2.5 years. So 2020?
2020.
Why was it abolished?
There were concerns at that time. We were in the height of COVID. My understanding is there were concerns about finances at that time. We as schools, we were all receiving threats from the state. We're going to cut your aid by 20%. So that was the reason for that. Primarily, Scott has a history of that. I think I summed it up. Anything more to add to that?
Yeah.
So when you establish and implement the instructional technology committee, which you answered one of the questions by staff and students, will they be doing the ones that will evaluate what devices are needed in each of the schools?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so, I can get up here and say we need to have laptops at the high school and iPads at Jackson. I can make that happen, but I certainly want to get the staff and student perspective on that. That was really quite evident in the survey. We heard frustration from our students and from our staff on use of, not that their Chromebooks are not working, but there's issues with them. I heard that from my own children as well. So I was asked last week what the most surprising piece for me in this whole study was, and honestly was as a dad, I heard my, Megan and Matthew talk about how the Chromebooks, they work okay, and I just kind of blew them off, respectfully. But then I hear it here, so it was eye-opening to hear that as a pattern. So.
How much in our...
I'm sorry, maybe,
Sure, yeah.
So one of the mantras that we've had in the department this year, whether it be because of something I said or the department as a whole, is that we just don't operate in isolation. Because it's really easy for an IT department to spend all of its effort trying to make things work without talking to anyone outside of the box that we operate. Because we operate in a place where no one says anything until things don't work. So when the number one goal in the department just becomes making things work, you start operating in a place of isolation and you don't start asking anyone any questions, right? So hypothetically, let's say if someone said, we've had these devices for 5 years, right? Well, guess we need to put an order in and replace them, right? We'll just use that as an example, right? Yes, they might be at a time where the replacement cycle is up and you should replace them. But the question is, and it could be a simple question, as simple as one email to a person, and it's just, hey, do we still need these? Or are these the things that we need, right? And the answer back could be, well, we need to have a conversation about that because it might not be what we need. Or, yes, absolutely, let's get that replacement cycle working. And we've tried in lots, and that's just one example, but we've tried in lots of places in the last 6 months, or at least I'll say from my perspective, to start asking those questions. I wasn't here before July to know whether or not those types of questions were asked in the past, but it's certainly something that we're trying to do now.
Thanks, Brad. John?
With our curriculum, how often or how much do we use these for students on a regular basis? I mean,
So you mean?
I would imagine high school kids are using them more than Jackson kids.
Well, it really depends. You know, I would say, I think all kids use a device at some point in time during the day. It just depends on what it's for.
Yeah, they absolutely do. It also depends on what it's for and how comfortable the teacher is in using technology. So there are some teachers across the district that are more, that are more adept than others, and that's fine. That's why we're talking about having technology coaches there as well. The expectation is, the board policy, we expect our students to be strong in this area. We have to make sure we can support our teachers as well.
During the pandemic, they were invaluable.
Yeah. So John, did I answer? I was just sort of, John, you're talking about the technology standard or how technology is used in instruction?
Used in instruction, because I guess I was used to COVID. You know, they were on their Chromebooks all the time, and now that Chromebook doesn't come home at all anymore. So how much are they using it?
In my opinion, one of the biggest things that we need to go back to are teaching the skills to use the device. So like teachers do instructional things and might have kids like write an essay in a Google Doc or something. What they aren't necessarily having time to do is teach the ribbons of the programs, you know, how to do certain things, some of those key basic features that can be taught, like just through, and then if you look at the standards, there's a lot of skills with that will spiral up, so that, you know, you really develop kids that are proficient with going off to college. High school teachers have told us that some of the students don't know how to make a capital easily. Some really basic things that we've lost sight of. You assume they know how to do it.
Okay. So part of this will be getting that back into our curriculum.
Embedding it, really, going to embedding it, so it's not done in isolation.
Okay.
That's why it's really so important that we have in this role, that we have a person who has been a teacher, who has educational background and understands technology, so they can talk about, in my world, fixing the roofs just as much as they can talk about fixing iPads and helping a teacher with a Bill of Rights lesson. It's a wide-ranging job, wide scope of responsibilities. So what I'd like to do is, in March or so, bring back a recommendation on the board agenda to move ahead with this.
Yep.
System has value.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Jason, I think you're going to stay right up there, or you're going to come sit down?
I'll come back and sit down, so I'm going to come sit front of John. Thanks.
Next up is reports, and we will hear from Mr. Smith again.
So thank you. I just would point out to the board members, you have at your tables the official guidelines for Board of Education members that we approved at the last meeting. We gave it to you in hard copy, so you can have that at your disposal. I want to recognize and thank our John Kennedy staff, Mr. Sutton and Mr. and Mrs. Knapp. I participated along with several other staff in the polar plunge last Friday at John Kennedy. We raised over $9,000 for Special Olympics. I want to thank the staff and the leadership on that. I also want to recognize, I'm just going to show through some numbers and I'll give you my punchline. We had over 330 total entries from January 9th into our system that's used to address facility shortages. Everything from fixing doors and windows. So we had over 300 entries. Out of those 330, 193 of those were tied back into facilities. Okay. Out of those 193, only 20 are still in progress. So that's not too bad. So I want to thank Jim Jacobs, our interim building and grounds director, and his staff for their very good response time with this. So again, 173 out of 193 requests have been filled since January 9th. And probably that number has probably shrunk probably between last week and now. I want to just take a minute and comment on the state budget, not on our budget. But I sent you last week some information from rural schools. We get lots of information from NISBA, from small cities. I had a conversation with Corinne last week on David Little from rural schools and how astute his analysis is. So I want to share with you some of his findings and the ones I think are especially relevant as to how it ties into our state budget. The first thing we can comment on is this is positive news. The state, this plan would finally fulfill foundation aid as promised. So there's an attempt to have our state aid fully funded. There's a plan to fund school-based mental health centers. There's funds set aside for pre-K funding. There's plans, this is going to make Scott happy, I know, to continue universal school meals. One of the concerns, though, is that the budget does not reinstate prior year aid, but overall, it's a positive piece. We also want to make sure that foundation aid will stay fully funded moving forward. So it's great that we have it this year. We want to make sure that the foundation aid is fully funded next year. But I just want to read through some of the priorities that have been set by rural schools. Even though we are in a small city, we're also considered a rural school as well. So the main priorities that have been addressed, one obviously is school aid. The second one is transportation. There are concerns, as John and Alexanne heard last month, with our school buses moving to all electric by the year 2037. We don't own our own school buses, but those costs would, of course, be passed down to us through our transportation contract, so we need to be leery of that. Student mental health, school staffing shortages. Tricia can speak to this firsthand. School staffing in all areas. School safety is always going to be an ongoing issue. Learning recovery is still an issue, even though we're 2 or 3 years out of the pandemic. We're still finding different issues there as well. So I just want to recognize that we'll have more information for you on our budget at the March workshops. But overall, we're pleased with the numbers we've gotten. Anything to add to that, Scott? Wanted to share with you some highlights from our athletics. I mentioned these last week in my update to our families. Our boys indoor track team won the Jack Reed Showcase at RIT last month. Our Notre Dame and Batavia swim team claimed their first ever league championship. Our BHS cheerleaders finished first at a recent competition. Of course, wrestler Casper Stewart is on a roll. He keeps winning and winning. There's another article on him today, but he did win sectionals last week. Our boys basketball team won the Monroe County Division IV League Championship. Our hockey team is currently ranked 12th in the state and is looking forward to a sectional game next week. And our Batavia Notre Dame girls swim team came in second place at the intersectionals last weekend as well. The first weekend in March, we're going to have our musical Les Mis. I had the honor this year of playing in the pit with the students, and I saw the entire show yesterday. It's fantastic. I hope we can all make it. I may even want to see it more than once, but we have some very talented students. I'm looking forward to being part of that the first weekend in March. February is Black History Month. We have a number of events happening across the schools to celebrate Black history. Last week, we recognized National Counselors Week. You heard me talk about the state aid budget and the importance of having strong counselors in place. And finally, last week or the week before, we met with our strategic plan team across the district. Alice Ann was your board rep. Each team went through and updated, as you heard here tonight, each team went through and updated the entire district team on the status of their plans. Alice Ann was one of our participants. We gave them feedback on their plans. I'll give Alice Ann an opportunity to talk about that process if she would like.
I found it very interesting in that one of the exercises at the meeting was for each of the different schools to put suggestions down, or each of the schools had done the same thing we had in our board planning meeting we had, where they put post-it notes, and they were all writing down suggestions for every school. This could work here, this could work here, and it was very cooperative between all of the schools, no matter what grade level they were teaching or they were responsible for. So it was a really quick meeting, I thought, but it seemed very successful, and everyone was glad to participate.
And there'll be a follow-up session in June, and you can expect Dr. Corey and I to give you a final update in June. We'll have the results of hopefully our academic results. We've been surveying our staff and our parents. I had one out last week in my update, so we're going to have all those for you as well. And that ideally will drive the next steps of the strategic plan. So, Molly, anything to add to that?
No.
Okay.
It's exciting to see the plan come alive everywhere.
And that's all. Thank you, John.
Okay. All right, next up, we're going to need a motion to approve the grouping of consent items. This would be a motion to approve consent items E1 through J1. We do have a board member that is with us via Google Meet due to extraordinary circumstances. Ms. Lenve, and she will vote with us remotely. So.
Jen, can you hear us?
Yes, I need to abstain from I-4. Consent item I, number 4.
Okay.
She would abstain from all of them.
Just I-4.
Okay, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mr. Riegel, may I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Roll.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that brings us up to the consent funding number 10. Okay, sorry. All right, new business. Approve the resolution for the July 2023 Board of Education reorganization meeting. Be it resolved that the Board of Education approves the resolution for the July 2023 Board of Education reorganization meeting to be held on July 10th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mr. Riegel?
Second.
Ms. Benedict?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right. Next up, BCSD 2023-2024 school calendar. Be resolved that the Board of Education approves the Batavia City School District 2023-2024 school calendar as proposed. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Ms. Bowman, can I have a second, please?
Second.
Ms. Anderson?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Next up, Board of Education Policy and Audit Committee 2023-2024 schedule. Approval of the 2023-2024 Board of Education Policy and Audit Committee meeting dates as proposed. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Benedict? Second?
Second.
Ms. Bowman?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Number 4, 10 and 12 month 2023-2024 employee holiday schedules. Approval of the 10 and 12 month 2023-2024 employee holiday schedules. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Ms. Benedict? Second?
Second.
Ms. Bowman?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Number 5, 2023 election nominations to the Board of Genesee Valley BOCES. 2023 election nominations to the Board of Genesee Valley BOCES. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Can I have a second? That was Mr. Regan, by the way, so. Can I have a
Second.
Ms. Benedict?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, next up is our discussion and or other reports. Any board members that have anything?
I do. Not only did I attend the Strategic Plan Committee meeting a couple weeks ago, the Genesee Valley School Board Director, Patrick Burke, had arranged for anyone that was involved with the Genesee Valley School Board Association meetings to click in on a Zoom with Senator George Borrello. He is the senator for Cattaraugus, Chautauqua, Genesee, Wyoming, and the westernmost part of Allegheny. So it's a very rural school district, districts that he represents. And we actually got to ask him questions. He gave us a statement about the governor's budget. And he also said that he was happy about the foundation aid. But he also expressed the opinion that he didn't think it would continue into the future after this year. We had a couple of the representatives of the other schools were concerned about not this year's budget, but next year's budget. But I didn't fret because we have to do this year's budget first. There were a lot of comments made about the funding formula. And he couldn't speak to that, whether it was going to be looked into, but a lot of school districts complain about how the funding, foundation aid funding formula is actually written. And he also had lots of talk about the electric bus issue, because with this being such a rural school representation that he has, they all own buses. And they're all quite concerned about the costs and what they would have to do with their budgets to be able to afford the busing that they to replace buses. Right now, electric buses cost about 3 times the amount that a regular bus costs. Plus, Mr. Borrello, Senator Borrello, had some criticism about this mandate himself, having to do with having to buy more power for all of these electric buses in New York State, and that the cost savings wouldn't reflect how much it's going to cost school districts, and that this was unfunded. There was no talk about how these schools that might have to purchase these electric buses would be able to pay for them. And He also talked about the Universal School Meals Program, and that there, and I guess I would just generally say that he would like to hear from boards of education within his representative area about the issues that they're coming up with personally, and he's talking about letters to him, and so that he can be more in touch with what's going on in the school districts he represents, although he has a lot of other things to consider. I got the impression that education was a big part of what he was concerned with. He talked about the mental health things that were going on within the budget, and but he did want to know about facts and situations and issues within school districts. So I was a bit encouraged by that, because Jason and I and John, we went to see Steve and Holly speak at York a few weekends ago, and I found that Mr. Hawley didn't really address any of those kinds of issues. Of course, he talked about the electric buses, but he didn't really give us any idea about, what we should do, as boards of education to get our voices heard. And I thought Senator Borrello was a bit more accepting of the idea that he really needs to hear from us, even though a lot of his information comes from downstate. So I was encouraged. But he did also explain that this was what the governor's budget was, what she suggested, and there will be many, many changes made before it's actually adopted, and he also expected it to be late. So it was an interesting hour.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
John, I had just a couple things I wanted to point out with Mrs. Notaro and Mrs. Tenney here. I should have thanked them when they were here, but I'm a little biased because those are my schools that I represent, but they do a phenomenal job. As you saw with their presentation tonight, but you go into the school to visit, those kids know their names, and the interaction there is just unbelievable. It's a fun atmosphere, and I think one of the things that they've done a tremendous job with is their connection with the community programs that they do when they have so many community programs or organizations there to assist with it. They take a lot of pride in nipping any issues in the bud beforehand, and will contact the parent if they see something on social media, or just the communication that they have with the parents and the families is great. So I want to publicly thank them and tell them what a tremendous job. One of the other things too, with our changing of the meetings, just to point out, with our leadership team, they also, they're not presenting every single month, but their reports are on the website now to go, and I want to thank them for their monthly reports. Reading through, there's a lot of great things that happen in the district that we don't talk about right here that they point out, and again, I want to thank you guys for a great job that you guys do each month for us too. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Anything else? All right. It's going to be a call for executive session. We will not return to public session. The call for executive session is need a motion to move to executive session to discuss matters relating to the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Ms. Bowman, could I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Benedict?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?